It only took the click of a mouse, and CBS Atlanta News was able to track down a phony ID mill out of China. They're duplicating nearly real driver's licenses in 20 states, including hard-to-replicate security features like holograms, ultraviolet images, and barcodes.
They look more real than mine, and I know mine's real.
The process was simple. Fill out a form, take a picture, and then we sent $200 cash to China.
They send you a little trinket, and underneath that were the two fake IDs.
The IDs were smuggled through customs in this little box, disguised as a gift. We took our fake licenses to Georgia's Department of Driver Services.
It is a very good reproduction.
Director of Investigations Rick Miller and his team scanned the ID.
The presentation of the photograph, the signatures that are around the photograph itself and the placement, the hologram.
And they all said it was a good duplicate of a legitimate license.
It's not comforting to me.
That would be the most important document for a traditional criminal organization or a terrorist organization.
Former FBI Special Agent in Charge Michael Tabman says terrorists can use fake IDs like this one to get fake birth certificates and even legitimate passports.
It's very dangerous. Anytime a terrorist or even just a traditional criminal could operate under the cloak of secrecy, you know, they're moving around the country, they're moving around the world, and we can't track them by their real name. That gives them an advantage over law enforcement.
It's a tactic that terrorist groups have used to live in the United States for years while they plot their attacks.
For Homeland Security, the issue is, can these IDs actually be used to create a real sort of base of operation or a kind of identity that then has, you know, months or years to, you know, kind of be established.
September 11th, 2001. You will remember this day as long as you live.
The 9/11 hijackers, for instance, lived in the U.S. and boarded planes that morning using fraudulently obtained state IDs.
Somebody who is going to be a potential hijacker, somebody like the 9/11 folks, get in the country, get access to a Georgia, a Tennessee, and Idaho driver's license, and they operate pretty much based on that identification without much problem.
It's a frightening thought, but very real concern, according to U.S. Senator Johnny Isakson.
As you and I sit here talking somewhere, maybe in the Middle East, maybe somewhere else, maybe even in our own country, there are those that would do us harm, trying to figure out some way to beat the system.
15-year-old Gavin Prince sits behind bars, accused of bludgeoning his great-grandmother over and over again with a samurai sword. Part of that attack was captured here on police dashcam video. But the clues Gavin would one day be dangerous spanned back almost 13 years before.
When he was in about 18 months, 2 years old, we had been kicked out of every daycare center in the county.
This is the first time Laura Prince has spoken to anyone on camera to tell us Gavin's story.
It was just getting worse and worse as he hit puberty. He started getting worse and more argumentative and combative.
Prince describes her grandson as a carefree kid 1 minute, but in a second he'd swirl into a violent rage.
It's like somebody I didn't know. He changed physically, just became almost evil. The whole face changed. I knew then I might as well go ahead and start calling 911.
But what was disguised when there was no light?
There was no electricity on.
Turned out to be the start of a 3-month nightmare.
I went ahead and signed the lease, paid her the money, came back the next day, had the electricity turned on, and I fell to my knees in tears.
The word of tenant after tenant at house after house, documented in court records and inspection reports. Complaints of no water, no heat, floors with no coverings, and sewage spilled just about everywhere.
It was bad.
On September 16, 2011, an armed robbery was committed in this Lawrenceville apartment complex. 2 victims said the gunman had tattoos on his face, across his eyes, and he was called by the nickname CeeLo. Enter 27-year-old Carlos Orlando Fairley.
My host was making a whole lot more money.
Carlos, or CeeLo for short,
My brother actually gave me that name.
had just applied for a job with the TSA to help support his family.
I got a letter back like 3 weeks later, and they said you was wanted for 2 counts of armed robbery in Gwinnett County.
Are you thinking couldn't have been me?
Knew it wasn't me.
We met up with Carlos in his hometown of Gulfport, Mississippi. He said he wasn't even in Georgia at the time of the crime. It was a 9.5-year relationship marred by explosive fights and then fits of what Taekwondo Williams can only describe as love.
Loved him unconditionally, and we have a beautiful family together. He wasn't always abusive.
But that abuse was documented in a handful of police reports obtained by CBS Atlanta News. In 2008, Malcolm was arrested after he punched and choked Taekwondo Williams, pulled out a handgun, pointed it at her head, and threatened to kill her. In another case, he is accused of choking her until she was unconscious.
I was afraid for my life. I was scared, shocked.
But it was 2011 when a final violent outburst suddenly changed both of their lives.
She was defending her life against an individual who was willing to beat her with a pistol while she was pregnant with his child.
Court records show Malcolm returned to the couple's home drunk one night. They began to fight, and what happened next is a matter of dispute.
We don't believe it was a self-defense situation.
Police say in the midst of the heated argument, Williams went to the kitchen, she grabbed a knife, walked back into the other room, and then stabbed her boyfriend in the arm.
The stab wound went through his forearm and just happened to hit the artery in his arm, and he subsequently bled to death.
The autopsy report shows Malcolm's blood alcohol content was 0.176, more than twice the legal limit. But what about this never-before-released information that calls into question her intent? A notebook in Williams' home went into detail about how angry she was, saying payback is a bitch.
This is vehicular homicide. This is pure negligence. And this gentleman is Walt. That's all I want is justice, nothing else.
The emotion is raw 5 months after Blaine Kirby's wife was killed in a tragic accident. The other driver was Hampton City Councilman Harold Walls.
Has he received a ticket for the accident?
Not one thing.
On June 11th, Walls was traveling southbound on Highway 42.
This was a day where it had rained, the roadway was wet.
He was driving this old dump truck, which Walls used to haul trash for his company, D&J Hauling. Police say Walls pressed on his brakes.
And in doing so, lost control of the vehicle. I believe there may have been some sort of brake malfunction, but his vehicle actually went over the center line, and Miss Kirby's vehicle struck the dump truck, and she was pronounced dead at the scene.
He's a city councilman for the city of Hampton. He doesn't have a business license, hadn't had one in 3 years.
And records obtained by CBS Atlanta News shows Walls' commercial truck hadn't been properly inspected in accordance with motor carrier safety regulations since 2003. A Georgia State Patrol inspection after the accident found the truck had multiple deficiencies, including the brakes being out of service.
We have not been able to find any justification whatsoever for that Cherokee County Sheriff's Department sniper to shoot Andrew Messina. Zero.
We'd still be sitting there today if it weren't for that very, very aggressive act that he made of ramming the gun and the pistol straight through a glass door at our officers.